stressing other, they should know also.
It's also dramatic.
Okay. Is it recording cheerayo?
Another 2 minutes.
Yeah. Zoom user could be Hemachechi Avana chance. ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞില്ലേ ഹേമചേച്ചിയാണ്.
Sir, can we start in 2 minutes?
Yeah. Ready?
Apo video on cheyda kollam sir.
Okay. Light on.
Ada light illa.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Actually, we can start the recording.
Okay.
Namaskar. I am very happy to welcome all of you to this webinar on behalf of All India Women's Conference, South Zone B and AIWC-TVPM main branch. We have been having these series of lectures under the Literary and Cultural Forum of Trivandrum main branch, and this is the 19th lecture under this series. We are very fortunate to have Professor Dasan Mannarakkal with us today to talk to us about tribal culture and literature. So before we start, since we have people from outside AIWC also attending this webinar, and for you also, sir, I'll just give a very brief introduction about All India Women's Conference. All India Women's Conference is a 94-year-old women's organization, started in 1927, and the founders were Margaret Cousin, Sarojini Naidu, and many others, all very well-known names in the history of Indian women's movement. We have branches all over the country, and more than 1 lakh voluntary members. Kerala and Karnataka make up the South Zone B. We have nearly 20 branches each in Kerala and Karnataka, taking into account the constituent branches also. So I am Usha Nair, zonal organizer of South Zone B. Dr. Jamila Begum is the director of the Literary and Cultural Forum, but since she is abroad, and so is Dr. Kamini, who's the coordinator of the online programs. I'm conducting the program on their behalf, actually. So I'll give a very brief introduction about Professor Dasan. He has very rich experience of 30 years or more in institutions of higher education, including Government College Kannur and the Central University of Kerala. His PhD was on African American literature, and after that postdoctoral research he has done on Theyyam, which is a devotional ritualistic dance form of worship, and then also on the Canadian First Nation cultures and literatures, and Australian Aboriginal literatures. So these are all dealing with the indigenous people in different continents. So as you can see, he has a very wide knowledge and experience in this subject. And we are very fortunate, sir, to have you here with us. I extend to you a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Dasan has published more than 59 books and 50 articles. And he mentions that his interest outside of work includes organic farming, social service, and engaged Buddhism, which was a term that was very new to me. So I looked it up, where else but Google, and I found that it deals with the understanding of the complete yet complicated interdependence of all life. So that sounds very interesting. I hope that during interactions, you will tell us something about engaged Buddhism as well. So without wasting any more time, we'll go directly into the lecture. So sir, please, you can start your lecture.
Thank you very much. Very good afternoon to everyone. Yeah, as you know, this is a very vast topic. First of all, I see that the term tribal itself is problematic because, as you might know, this is a colonial constructed terminology. So people like us have differences regarding that, but I also normally use the term tribe because this is a kind of imposing a kind of homogeneity on these people, indigenous people. Other alternative terminologies that me also often use are, if it is reference to Australian people, Australian Aboriginals. If it is reference to North American people, then it's reference to First Nations or natives. None of them are happy with this term. For us, for the Indians, again, we have been following the idea or the word that is used by British people, tribals. So it's not, the first thing I wanted to point out is it's not a homogeneous group of people. It's very heterogeneous. The first characteristic of tribal culture is it is heterogeneous. But for the sake of, or for want of another term, let us also use the tribe, but I have my own reservations about that. That's all, to begin with. And another problem is a non-tribal. I'm not a tribal person. So a non-tribal speaking about a tribal is also problematic because all of us are aware of the political correctness. As an academic, we have been trying to maintain, criticize ourselves when we take positions of another subjectivity. So within the limits of these two problematics, I would try to share a little bit of what I have read and what I have learned and what I have studied and what I have researched. The audience are free to interrupt me, ask questions whenever you want, because I very rarely do monologuing. So that is one of the problems I have. I refused a lot of applications and requests for online communication because it's always like a monologue. So please break that kind of a monologic discourse. Okay. As I said, tribal people, I might refer to, because within the time schedule, I might refer to only three groups of tribals. One is, of course, our own tribal people. Then, of course, might be some reference to North American tribal people, and then Australia. As I said, it's a heterogeneous group and it's a diverse group, but they do have shared characteristics or commonalities, which probably enables us to speak holistically or in generally about tribals as a whole. We have in Asia, we have in Australia, we have in North America, in different parts of the world, and we have an indigenous group of people, indigenous working group of indigenous peoples of the world. It's a United Nations body. So we do get information and interact with almost different tribal people in different parts of the world. Then, of course, generally speaking, their culture is distinct or maybe unique. And they have a shared genealogy, a common language, probably a common territory, their attitudes to land. But each tribe is unique in the sense that if we address them in general terms, they may not be happy at all. It is now a cultural, social, and political entity. For example, in the northeastern tribes, rather than being cultural, it has become a political force to reckon with the central government. They do have customs, beliefs, styles of life, rituals, worldviews, norms of behavior, food habits, worldview, which are different from ours. So that may be one of the reasons that we have to address ourselves when we look at their culture and behavior. What are the commonalities? Very simple. They are more spiritual than us. You might also say that we are also spiritual. We have our own religions, Christianity or Islam or Hindu. For me, it is Buddhism. But their kind of spirituality is different from our kind of spirituality. They don't have an institutionalized religion. They do believe in nature. They do believe in their ancestors or their own deities, which are indigenous. Which, of course, if you are interested, probably we can have a discussion later. So another characteristic of these tribal people in different parts of the world are their endurance, their resistance, their resilience, because they have been struggling to survive amidst a lot of struggles, a lot of havoc on their culture, their lifestyles, their life patterns, everything. Now, whatever I'm saying is tribal culture as ideal, because as you know, since the last maybe 100 years, since colonization, there have been tremendous changes in their tribal culture, their language, their lifestyles. Many of them have been internalized. Mainstream religions like Hinduism or even Christianity. So we cannot say that the tribal that I'm speaking of now is the kind of ideal tribal of which we know a little bit. Because even I had interactions with many of the tribals and they're saying, no, what you're saying, Dasan sir, is not right. We have changed. So let us bear in mind that whatever we are speaking as academics or activists about the ideal tribal, and of course if we have time, we will also see how their life is transformed due to liberalization, globalization, colonization, and Sanskritization, etc., internalization of a lot of things. Leave it that now. So one of the major impact on tribal or indigenous people all over the world was, as we know, is colonization. Either it is Spanish or British or American, whatever it has been the first impact, because the colonial surmise proposition was these people are uncivilized, so they had to be civilized. You know, the mission, la mission civilizatris. So in order to justify their claim to civilize a people, they have to project the idea that these people are uncivilized. These people have no religion because they are not following our religion, but they had their own religion, which is different from either Christianity or Hinduism or Islam or any other thing. So the colonial constructed images, and of course, missionaries came with colonization. I don't know how many of you are academics or researchers in this field. If you are interested, you just read any literature from First Nations or North Americans or Australians. Then you'll find how these people now write in the colonial language itself, how the colonization and missionary had done havoc to them. I don't have time to speak in length about it. So colonization, missionary and established religions and national governments also, including our own government, because Indian government maintained the position in United Nations Assembly. When it comes to the question of taking dissent-based discrimination in the International Conference on Racism, the official spokesman of India said, we are not sure that whether our tribal peoples are indigenous peoples. But since 2007, India is a signatory to the Convention of Indigenous Peoples. It is an oxymoron or it's a paradox. So since India has not accepted the tribal people of various, maybe more than 500 groups as indigenous people. They are not getting the land rights, which they should have right had they been recognized as indigenous people according to the UN Convention. This is the reality. Then, of course, modernity, governance, anthropologists, sociologists, and historians have shared their contributions in terms of constructing the image of these people as not as what they really are, especially anthropologists and folklorists and ethnologists. Their values are different from us. Of course, they have been educated. Some might say they have been benefited. Yes, because they can articulate their feelings in colonial language, just like Caliban. Their language has been destroyed. But still, some of them have a mixture of dialogues. I'll give you examples of the recent publication from Malayalam. The tribals in at least 15 languages, they write in their own dialect, then translate in Malayalam. It has been published recently for the first time in Kerala by the DC, Gotra Kavita. I don't know how many of you have seen it. So their worldviews are different. Their religions are different from institutionalized religions. Now we'll speak about cultures of indigenous people. Cultures, we can only say cultures because it is, as I told you, it's heterogeneous. In different parts of the world, these people, for various reasons, their culture, their lifestyle has been transformed. I only know, as I said, a little bit about North American cultures and Australian Aboriginal people. I was lucky to live with them for a couple of months. That's how my interaction. It was very difficult, but then I was lucky.
37.7.
Someone is speaking? Please mute if you don't mind. Yeah. So the talk will generally be on native, Aboriginal, and tribal cultures. The discourse would highlight the general characteristics of their cultures despite specifications. I will repeat, they are people with an holistic worldview. They do believe in interdependence. You've been speaking about the engaged Buddhism, just like that. So maybe around 30,000 years before, or maybe 3,000 years before, we had a kind of people living as Ajivaks who find their relation with everything in nature. If you take the same, one of the title of the book by Thomas King, a North American writer, is All My Relations. That's the title of the book of an anthology of literature, All My Relations. That explains the worldview of Aboriginal people all over the world. Everything is related, the tree, the river, the rock, the heaven, the sky, the animals, everything is related. It's a kind of interdependence. That's a part of their value system. Their connection with their family. Family again is different from our family. Our family is husband, wife, and children. No, for them it is extended family. Extended family means, for example, if their father is lost or mother is lost, it's natural for a tribal boy or a girl to go to the neighbor and they will look after them as their mother and father. I have seen it with my own eyes. I don't know whether you can believe it. And they call it short mama, black mama, fat mama, gray mama. So for them, everyone is a mama and everything is a papa, which is a kind of life which we have not seen living in reality. They have reference to elders, land, flora and fauna, animals, and land. Now let's come to the literature. Again, literature, they write now in their own languages, tribal languages. For in North America, most of the tribal, they had more than 87 or 100 tribal languages before colonization. But after colonization, many of them is extinct almost, but at least one they have been able to preserve, which is called Cree, C-R-E-E. I have seen books which is published on French on one side, English on the other side, and Cree on the other side. Trilingual textbooks published by the Cree. And now the government is protecting them, giving all kinds of helps. So in Australia also, they have lost almost all their languages, but they write in Aboriginal English, which is for us ungrammatical English or maybe non-standard English. I was lucky to meet the first tribal writer, Robert Brofo, who was the first Aboriginal publisher. It is in 1962. The title of the book is The Fringe Dweller. Now he is no more. That was written in Aboriginal English. Australian publishers refused to publish it, saying that it needs to be edited. He said, no. If you edit it in your colonial English language, that will become your own. So I don't want. So he has to wait for 2 years. And then in 1964, the same publisher published it with its own title, the same Aboriginal English. That is the Robert Brofo's Fringe Dweller. Now he's no more. So that is about the tryst with the language of the Aboriginal. So literature, their own language, very few, mainly in English or French or in other languages. Especially in Cuba, you have they have expressing itself in Spain and in other parts in their own dialects. Of course, it is there. So they have narratives, plays, fiction, autobiography, biography, poetry. It's easy for me to refer only to poetry because otherwise it takes a lot of time. So I might be referring to some of the poems only. Australia had 300 languages, and it's a country with diverse geographical features. And we are including Torres Strait Island people also. So the terminology for Australian Aboriginal people is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, an island very near to the Australian continent. So if you have any questions, you can shoot it. Don't wait for me to finish. That's up to you. Okay. What is peculiar about Australian Aboriginal? Yeah, you can raise hands or whatever you want. Okay. About Australian Aboriginal culture, one concept is very, very important for us, something which we may not have heard. It's a dream time. Australian Aboriginal could recollect their genealogy since dream time. Dream time for them is the first time their ancestors lived or put their leg on the continent, which could be at a minimum of 80,000 years before. But the 18th century Captain Cook claimed that this is my land because I'm the first person who put my feet into this land. And now they are saying, before you landed here, we were here. We have been living here. We have our own languages, our own culture. So that is about their dream time. And their myths, their arts, their legends, their oral traditions are so rich that it contains their own history, orality as history. Their songs and song cycles. I don't know if you have done some work or some reading on our own folk literature, you might have seen song cycles. A song, anyone can join the cycle and continue, another can join, it becomes a group. So that is called song cycles. It is these song cycles through which the Aboriginal community communicates their history, lesson, education, values to the younger generation. So songs are there, their craft, their dance, their music. Again, diversity is the mark of their characters, but they have commonalities, as we said. I have only occasion to meet at least 5 or 6 Aboriginal communities there: Kuris, Muris, Yamanjis, etc., etc. Just like our tribal people have annual or ceremonial meetings as part of their rituals, they do. Australian Aboriginals also have a common meeting. It's called Korobori. Korobori means common meeting. Equivalent of that in North America is powwow. Powwow is a kind of celebration of all tribal people coming together and celebrating. We had occasion, luckily, to stay with them in the forest and to participate in their powwow in both places, in Australia as well as in Aboriginal. So literature, poets are there, any number of poets are there. I don't know, my naming would be happy. If you want, at least I'll just browse through some of the major Australian poets, right? Very beginning from Udguru Nunukal, that's a tribal name. That is then Lionel Fogarty, Kevin Gilbert, Samuel Wagon, Yvette Holt, Alison Urban, Murra Munkara, and Alice Cobby Eckerman. We had in 2017 a meeting organized by the Monash University in Australia, where From India, they have invited 10 people, including the tribals and including me as an academician who had done some work in that. And from Australian side, there were 10 Aboriginal people. So it was a wonderful experience. That's how we could meet some of them and we could exchange. If you have questions, then you can ask later so that we can discuss. That's about North American poets. I also give some names, especially Canadian and American. Armand Rufo, Kateri Dam, Janet Armstrong, Beth Brand, Beth Cuttant, Connie Fife, Lee Miracle. I can give you a number of names, but that doesn't make sense. But still, I'm saying, if anyone is interested, there are innumerable number of web and textual materials. Often it is said that in Canada, Aboriginal books are published more than the white Canadians. So is the case in Australia nowadays. I don't know how many of them read it, but my impression is that Australians do not buy much. Again, in Canada also, white Canadians do not buy much, because when I bought hundreds of books and carried by paying extra payment to the flight, they were asking, how is it possible, Dasan, that you buy all these books with your own money and carry? I said, I want to learn and I want to teach. And that's how the humble contribution probably I have made in my career is that introducing these steps to the Indian academia. Now, most of the English departments probably have this because of the small efforts or humble efforts of some of us like that. Because we need to know the other side of the story, especially English department has moved on to culture studies and comparative department. We only know about ourselves. We don't know about others. Anyway, so literature, poets, North American cultures, Canada and US. Cultures are, of course, Maya and Aztec and Iroquois. A few tribes from North America, and even now still a little bit is there. America has already wiped out, but they've moved on to the Canadian side and northern side. Cherokee, Cree, Ojibwe, Mohawks, Navajo, Mi'kmaq, Haida, etc., etc., etc. Because of the geographical diversity, they have Arctic, subarctic, northeast, southeast, etc., just as we have northeast, south, etc., etc. Plains, basin, and their culture and expressions are slightly different depending upon their geographical divergence, as it happens in our own country. Again, just as I told you about dream time of Australians, the Canadians have something called vision quest. I wish I had more time to explain that. Vision quest is something which Aboriginal people take when they attain at the age of maybe 16 or 17. They just go to the forest or go to the desert single-handedly, no companions. And after maybe 2, 3, 4 years, through their wandering, they feel that their ancestral spirit have entered their body and they become a kind of significant person. And the moment they return alive, if they come alive with all these adversities of climate and things like that, they normally get more recognition in their society. It's there in African society as well. So that is called vision quest. It's very hard because living alone in the desert for years and years and years until they thought that they have a vision and they come back and they're accepted by the society as a great personality or a leader. They have very different ceremonies. Now it is very available on Google. Anyone who is interested, you can just type didgeridoo. Anyone having heard about didgeridoo? I don't know. Didgeridoo is a music produced by Australian Aboriginal people. It's almost a 2-meter long stick, like bamboo, something. It's a hole. So through this, they will produce almost all the sounds in the world. The streams flowing, the kangaroo moving, the storm, the thunder, everything. Luckily for me, they had arranged a special didgeridoo session for us from India. It's almost 1 hour, 2 hour session. It's a kind of major ritual performance, didgeridoo music. You just type it and you have in the Google and in the website, you will get it. And they have something called throat song. No alphabet, throat song. They call it, I thought there is no meaning. But then after listening, after evening and night time we shared, then they said, yeah, they have meaning. Especially the Cree people still on the North America. So they have throat song, different kinds of dances, which are all culturally significant. They make their own dress for the next year, just like the PM performers make their own dress for the next year. It is very unique. No one will have the same dress. A single dance, a musical dance, different kinds of ceremonies there. Honor ceremony, honoring the nature, honoring the seniors. So, and some of the rituals we are not allowed to participate in, but some we are allowed to participate in. We cannot take even photographs because they have sacrosanct for them. All these communities have medicine men or medicine women. I don't know whether you believe that if a First Nation or Amerindian student in the university has a real problem, especially some tensions or something, he or she will be given permission to go and meet their community medicine man or medicine woman. After the counseling, they get back to health and they come back. Now, they won't send it to the hospital or a psychotherapeutic personality. It's still, so medicine man and medicine woman is very, very effective in solidarity of their community. They still have. Medicine man and medicine women, as I told you, they have extraordinary powers. They have acknowledged by the entire community. They have belief, supernatural powers, of course. Yeah, just like our Adivasi Moopan Lakkanamlavri says, just like that. Now, coming to India, again, we call it Adivasis. Actually, they are the indigenous people of the world, but Indian government, as I told you, officially has not recognized them as indigenous people of the world. Some of us call them Adivasis, but government would like to call them Vanavasis only. You know the difference between Adivasis and Vanavasis. Vanavasis meaning only forest dwellers, which means they denied their ancestry. They denied their right to be considered as indigenous people. So it's a very clever political terminology. Government used to refer to forest dwellers. So anybody, if we live in forest, we can also be called forest dwellers. That denies your history of existence as the indigenous people. That is the politics I referred to about. So for us, they are Adivasis. And we generalize them. All Adivasis are alike. No. They are not indigenous people, as I told you. We have roughly 500 tribal groups. Exact government site is 464 or something like that. Plus 174 unrecognized groups. We are not yet grouped into. So they are generally being called others. Around 85 million population, 8.3% of Indian population are tribals. Some of them are forests, some of them are in the plains, some of them are in the city. There is a large number of indigenous urban population, not only in India. In Canada, when I went to Toronto, and I fixed an appointment with a Canadian writer, my imagination of meeting a Canadian Adivasi was very different. But then I meet him, he's just like a European, meeting me in the city, Canadian city of Toronto. So our imagination about an Adivasi need not be true, especially in the globalized context, if you meet them in urban centers in Australia or in any of the cities. So they have also transformed their lifestyles, etc., etc., etc. So pre-independence period and British colonization, you see there is a lot of difference. Even in independent India, even in the constitution, we had made 5th and 6th schedule to protect their interest. But in the general discourse, still they are otherized. We are the self and they are the other. We still consider them as primitive, irrational, exploitation of natural resources we are doing, but we blame them for using or overusing of forest producers. Deforestation has affected them. Commercial crops had denied them their natural sustenance. Displacement is a characteristic of their whole life. Encroachment from mainstream people as well as from plantations. Their land rights are denied. Development activities like mining, hydroelectric projects, including natural calamities. So it's a story of almost genocidal practices have been happening in different parts of the world, not only in India, but in other parts of the world as well. Adverse effects to natural habitat. There is no forest already. So how can the forest dwellers, even the forest dwellers can survive? So their natural habitat has been denied. livelihood has not been supported, evictions of different sorts, but still they are trying to resist, struggle for their lives. It's a lot of conflict, mental as well as physical. If we just had a browse at the kind of statistics on the reported crimes against these tribal groups in India, you have from 2011 to 2020, you have 77,000 crimes reported against scheduled tribes in our country. Only in 1 year, 2020, you have 808,272 cases of crimes reported. These are only reported. Unreported there are maybe enough or more than this. The number of scheduled tribes in prison in India is disproportionate to their population. So is the story in Australia and Canada. Now it comes to the literature. So for us, academically, in order to address these three groups of people, at least the academics have tried to use the term literature of the fourth world people. Those of you who are interested can browse through the web. Fourth world people. What does it mean by fourth world people? It's very simple. People who are still being colonized even in third world countries. That's why they are called fourth world. So theorizing has been done on fourth world literature. Volumes have been published on fourth world literature. Some of us have been teaching what is called fourth world literature, its characteristics in theorization, how it's different from Eurocentric theory or Indian dominant theory. So let us speak about speedily on the literature of fourth world people. As we have already seen, their literature was primarily oral. And these oralities have been repositories of indigenous systems of knowledge, which we don't acknowledge as knowledge. Their songs and tales and myths have been significant in terms of communicating their own systems of knowledge which have been preserved for ages and ages. And now the United Nations advise all the developed countries, go back and listen to the indigenous people, how they prevented, how they managed natural calamities like flood and forest fires, how they manage the environmental system, ecosystem. But UN will speak on, but we won't listen. Orality reflects their way of life, their worldview, their spirituality, their attitude towards nature, and everything on it. That's very important. Not only their attitude about nature, but everything on nature or in nature is also important. As I told you about the interdependence. Nature and themselves are extensions of each other. It's not like us, we create the binary, man versus nature, no. Nature and human beings and other flora and fauna are equally, they have equal right to exist. So it's a kind of interdependence, not the kind of binary that we have created, nature versus human being or nature versus culture, something like that. There has been change in the world order, but change in one would damage the other. For example, if you have a change in the ecosystem, that would change, that would probably exterminate some tribals because they've been, for example, if you have a crop or if you have a foliage, which they've been using for years and years, and if you destroy the entire and substitute with a commercial plantation, it's natural that that will affect their health. And then we will say, these people are uncivilized, they are not clean, so they die in numbers. Actually, what's happening is their sustenance, their natural sustenance is denied by our own interventions in their own habitat or life world. Education, yes. Yes and no. Has education been beneficial for tribal people? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that, like Caliban, they could express their thanks, their frustration, their hopes in a colonial language so that we can read and understand it. The other thing is that education itself has been colonial because they have internalized the idea that their culture is inferior. So that is the effect of colonial education, especially the missionaries. Missionary civilizational project was to brand them as uncivilized, inferior, the savage, as you know. Literacy, yes, increased. Now the question is, now they started writing. At least I told you in Australia, it's in 1962. In Canada, again, 1960s onwards, they started writing. In our places in India, I think in Northeast, because of the missionary education, they got educated in English. So they started expressing themselves in English. But in Kerala and South India and in other states, they have been expressing their orality in their own dialects. But till recently, even in Kerala, it's only last year or this year that we had a collection of poems written in their own dialects and then translated into second language. For them, Malayalam is second language. Now it's second language. So at least we know how they are speaking. I'll come to that a little bit later. Now, why write? You ask them, why do you write? And they say, it's a surviving tool. We have to survive. We have to be heard. We have been listening to the constructed stories about ourselves. But now it's time for us to tell our own stories in our own language or in your own language. Otherwise, we have been misunderstood all the while. Still, you will go on misunderstanding us. So writing for them is a survival tool to bring out their voices, to make their voices heard, the silenced voices, the ignored voices. History has falsified their images. History has distorted their images. History had given misinterpretation of their real struggles for independence or land rights. It's equally true of India and other countries. Their culture has not been understood properly because we were ignorant of their cultures, to be very frank. Their identity was misrepresented. They constructed a lot of stereotypes, and we are prejudiced, but we don't want to admit. It's difficult. They are saying writing is difficult for us because we have been following in a kind of oral tradition. And the rules of writing imposed by the mainstream notion of literature or writing, poetry, whatever, we have our own aesthetics, which is not applicable to them. So for them, it's a wrestling, but still they have been trying to write in their own way. It's necessary to our well-being, not only to us, but the well-being of our children, to be assured only through our own writing, so that others know what really we are. Our survival depends on the ability to refocus our attention creating artistically. Artistically could be craft, could be art, could be dance, could be music or literature. In short, it is a celebration of positive aspects of culture. Please note the idea positive. Preparing to overcome the challenges, obstacles to survival in the modern world. And for them, poetry is not separate from oral tales or songs. They have their own struggle to transcribe orality to writing. Now, think about yourself. Why do we discuss tribal culture and literature? I don't know whether it is Jamila ma'am who suggested to you or some of you suggested. But anyway, I presume that some of you at least, though not all, really would like, otherwise I would not have been asked to speak on this subject. Now let us think about that. Why? Why do we discuss tribal or indigenous culture or literatures? You can disagree with me, but I will point out certain things. You are warm welcome to disagree with me. Because the mainstream or dominant social cultural discourse has given us a distorted notion of what a tribal person is and what tribal culture is. Indigenous voices are inadequately articulated. That's my view. You can disagree. Because in the whole, I've been lucky to interact with almost all the universities in India and at least in 20 universities abroad. And my impression, my experience is that very few academics are sensitized into the other discourse. Very few, including in sociology and anthropology department. Literature, we're going to close. But it's a happy thing is that it is the literature people who are more sensitized to these kind of other voices. Maybe the interest in postcolonial theory and things like that. So I repeat, If at all you are not discussing tribal literature, why you should literature? You should discuss this. One, of course, is because of the dominant social discourses has not addressed them properly. Indigenous voices are inadequately articulated. There has been a lot of falsification, distortions, and constructed images. Now I'm cutting short. Tribal literature in India. Again, as I said, it's diverse. It's vibrant also. It's strong. It has its weakness as well. In India, we have South, North, Northeast, so there is naturally regional diversity. And the issues and perspectives and styles of writing is different. Lifestyle is different. In India, they write in vernacular, they write in English, and also in Hindi. Sometimes it's translated into different languages. You have now anthologies of Northeast poetry, where you have a large number of tribal poets writing. I have written down somewhere, but sorry, I don't know that. Maybe I'll come to that. So what about the themes? The themes of Indian tribal groups in general, of course, are their own legacy, tradition, continuity, land, displacement, intrusion, encroachment, atrocities, alcoholism, substance abuse, poverty, romance, joy, nature, nostalgia, whatnot. So the entire spectrum of life, especially the modern young tribal poets from Malayalam, they are as romantic as we are. They are not only singing or writing about poetry, poverty, struggle, etc., etc. They dream, they have vision. Yeah. Now, their writing is generally described as resistance writing. Tribal, with which I can conclude probably, tribal poetry in tribal languages and Malayalam. They write in their own dialect and which is translated into Malayalam also. I'm sure that you might have read about the first tribal writer from Kerala, Narayan, whose Kochereti was published in Malayalam first. And then, of course, we published our Oxford Anthology of Malayalam Dalit Writing, in which we also taken some excerpts from Narayanan. So we had a discussion with the Oxford University translator charge, Dr. Mini. And she suggested that why don't we try Dasan for translating Kochereti into English. Then, of course, we met with Narayanan and then we discussed, and luckily that's also materialized. So we have the first Malayalam tribal novel, Kochereti, now published by OUP. This is how kind of empowerment comes to them. Of course, it has its own limitations because there are some untranslatable words and expressions from their culture. I also experienced as a person who edited this Oxford Anthology of Malayalam Dalit writing, but within the limitations, it helps them to make their voice heard around the larger audience, because now we have people talking to us from different places of the world about Malayalam tribal literature. Now let's go on. So Narayan has said in his own introduction to Kochereti, I have not written this novel imitating anybody. This is my own. So 21st century is a situation where they are not bothered about how others feel about it. They are saying, yeah, this is what we are. We are not after your judgment. So that kind of empowerment is there. Tribal poetry in Malayalam and other languages has now become an in thing in all magazines, Bhasha Poshani, Desabhimani, Madhyamam, Madhrubhumi. Every one of them has special issues on Malayalam tribal poetry. It's the first time. And you have many, many people. For example, in this volume, Gotra Kavida, you have 95 poems, 42 poets, 30 male and 12 female. In first section, you have 30 poets, 28 men and 8 women, 42 poems, all Adivasi dialects. Second part, you have Malayalam. So this is a story. This is a very significant turning point in. And before that, Ashokan Mariyur has also published another volume called Pachavidu. This is the first anthology by one single tribal poet from Malayalam. So what I'm saying is that scenario is changing. We have not been listening to them, but they are now coming back. Now see it. This is how we are. This is how the culture is. So you are ignorant about our cultures and our languages. So you have to change. So the onus is us. We have to read them. We have to listen to them. Educated tribal youths. And their themes are all the themes that we mainstream writers write. History, myth, legend, lineage. I don't have time to reflect on their poems because that will take time. So their expression is unique. Life world and their activities, experiences, interaction with forests, hunting, hopes, frustration, challenges, anxieties, nostalgia, love, fears, joy, sorrow, criticisms, spirituality, their own deities, everything is there in this collection of tribal poetry in Malayalam. I wish I could speak about some poems, but I don't think I have exceeded my time limit. Is it okay?
No, sir, you can go on.
Okay, how many minutes?
Yeah, maybe another 7 minutes.
Great, that's fine. At least I'll take 1 or 2 poems. Ashokan Marayur probably is one of the most noted poets from the Adivasi community. In one of his poem is titled Podava. Podava in Malayalam also we know. Because in English there is no other word, so we call it sari. The only Podava that they buy in 1 year during Bongala. You see, I have done a rough translation because I'm planning to have a revise it later for another serious presentation. Just a crude translation I will read, just to give you an idea, if you haven't read. The only Podava bought during Pongala. One corner washed and tied, the other corner washed and spread it, because to lie down. To catch fish and crabs, the sari with which the child tied to the shoulder, and to keep the pallets plucked. See, there is only one sari for lying down, for catching the fish, and for what all things. And there is only a sari in 1 year. But they are happy in that way, quote unquote. Suresh Mavilan is another poet from Kasargod. We know all these people personally. The Changed Times, that is the title I have made it. Changed Times. He said, the old grandma frog used to come through the front door of our house, still in search for the steps to my house. They who have come by the doors behind still search for the old country oven from the threshold, and the oven where the oven were, it's now the signposts have gone. They hardly know the arrival of the modern oven with no fumes, no ashes, need no firewood. See, the natural inhabitants that has been coming to their house, their sign marks were the steps, the oven. But now they have transformed their lifestyles. So these creatures are wondering, where do I enter? Where do I get out? So innumerable. There is another small one, fence, which speaks about the value systems they imbibed and they transfer that to their children. Fence, veli. I planted a banana sapling, did not put fence around it. Why? Because I had taught my children how sweat is produced, how sweet a banana is, the price of hunger. Therefore, I do not put fence around my banana sapling. See, we put a fence because we have not taught our children not to encroach upon and not to pluck the banana another person. So their value system is such that they have taught it, so they don't need a fence. So it's very interesting. There are many. I am just one more I will read. Danya Venkacheri, she is a postgraduate in Malayalam. She lives in Kasargod. She is very profuse. She has written short stories as well. Wonderful for us to listen to. She is writing about Ramayana. Please listen. They asked me about Ramayana and Raman. I don't know anything about Ramayana and Raman in it. I only know my black Ramans who cleared the forest land and sowed seeds, caught crabs from the holes in the rivulets, who was pelted stones despite being 8 feet away. The Ramans who continued to work in the paddy fields and sing songs, no one wrote anything about them. None erected temples or offered puja to them. You see how they are recreating the myth of Ramayana or Raman. For them, the Raman is an imposed model citizen. Maryada Purushottam. One more with I stop. Then again, the title is Kaval, God. G-U-A-R-D, God. We have to be on guard. Keep us awake with the burning torch to cut the head and leg of those who cut or destroy the forest. There are many more of them. Let me conclude. One minute, I'll conclude. That is to you. Why do we discuss tribal culture? I asked the question. I am coming to it. Within 2 minutes, I'll stop. Knowing the other for us has to be very important. To free ourselves from our prejudices, born out of our ignorance of the other. To free ourselves from the conditioning of our education. Learning other cultures is like setting up a garden. I'm quoting from Prof. J. He says, learning other cultures is like setting up a garden. What do we do first? If we want to do a garden, clear the ground, pull out the weeds. And the weeds are the negative prejudices and biases that we have in mind about these people, that we have internalized from the media and from the books that we read. Second step, what do we do? After clearing the ground, put new seeds. But if before taking the seeds, we have to read the instructions on the packet. And that is how read the cover instructions, use the right word to address the tribal people. Don't call them Adivasis because Muduan, Malayan, Paniyan, Malayan, they would like to be addressed as to what they like to be addressed. It's not our pejorative or preferences. Talking to them, identify the positive aspect. I recollect one of my sessions with the students of Minnesota University in America. That was 20 years before. They wanted me to talk on the same topic, tribal culture, 25 years before. I asked them, when I wrote the word tribal or tribe on the blackboard and asked them to write in a small bit of paper, whatever immediately comes to their mind. Believe me, there were only 30 students. 28 of them wrote only negative images, ugly, uncivilized, unclean, etc., etc. Then we didn't have PowerPoint or internet at that time. I had my list of positive terminology about tribals written, and I showed them. Then they were all, I said, don't worry, it's not your fault. Then I asked a simple question. My dear students, what prevented you from mentioning or thinking of any positive aspects of the tribal when I asked you what comes to your mind? Oh, sorry, sir, we didn't mean it. I said, don't worry, it's not your problem. It's a problem of the kind of education that you got, either in US or in India. And then we had a lot of formal. So what I'm saying is, if I do the same exercise, I do have classes with college teachers, especially in academic staff colleges. And if I do the same, I'm sure things will be much different even now. Anyway, what is the third thing? Setting up a garden, fertilize, watering, which means we have to read on tribal literature. We have to discuss about tribal cultures. We have to participate in academic discussions on tribal people or culture. And this is how we probably can sensitize ourselves and prevent ourselves from being prejudiced a lot. Thank you very much. And you are free to ask questions now.
Thank you, sir, for that very illuminating lecture, because it has opened up almost a new world for us. We had only very superficial idea about we means I suppose most of us here, some of them would be more knowledgeable, I'm sure. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
So as we go to the interactions, is there anybody would like to ask? You can please unmute and ask.
Good evening, sir. I am Archana Nair. Okay, sir. First of all, thank you so much. It was a wonderful session. It was really, we just have, like Usha ma'am said, we just had a superficial idea about this different types of tribes, everything. So my question is, what is the, how do you understand the anthropological development of underdevelopment? And I wanted to know a little more about the Gondi tribe.
Gondi.
Gondi tribe.
Gondi or Gond?
Gond tribe.
Yeah, it's only Gond. Gond is one of the earliest and probably the most very, very tightly organized community people in Gond. They have, their leaders have participated in the resistance against British colonizers, and they have heroes, national heroes like that. They celebrate them. But they, because of their community is strong, their number is also a little bit more than the other. I have my statistics, but I put it somewhere. So they could enjoy the rights on their forest land now, though they are being threatened in other ways. Anthropological understanding is quite interesting because many of them were ethnographers. And for them, as I told you, colonial ethnography has been one of the major culprits in constructing the negative images of the tribal people, whatever be they. So Gonds are also like other groups. But because Gonds are very, what I should say, resilient, community-oriented, they have the power. And I think about the other people, Gonds have been very, very significant in claiming their rights over land and keeping up their rights. But details, you can get it either through web or we ourselves had many friends from these groups. As I told you, we had the opportunity to interact in India and in other countries. So there are, you can know who university is there, Assam, Northeastern Hill University. Many of the Northeastern tribal groups are professors there in English department. And they are also writers and activists. And many of the people we know personally, and many of them are using the internet technology wonderfully well. So if you're interested in any Gond community, you can get any number of, but before that, you read at least the anthology, OUP anthology of Northeastern literature or poetry, so that you get some idea. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
There is a question in the chat box.
Yeah.
Chitra is asking that you mentioned that many of them are in prison. What
Many
are the crimes?
Yeah.
Prison, in jail.
Yeah.
So what are the types of crimes that they are alleged to have committed?
I'll see. We have an idea. Again, they are alcoholics, right? Many of them are using substance abuse. Many of them are excessive drinkers. Some of them are sniffers of petrol. Have you heard about that? They sniff petrol instead of drinking petrol. And some of them drink petrol. Now the question is, it's easy for us to say, oh, these people are substance addicts or liquors. But because we have been exposed to live with them, let me tell you, Government of Canada gives every month a kind of stipend to unemployed tribal people. Okay. So the moment they get the stipend, you know what they do? They go to a bar, get drunk, roll down on the street. Why? Because they are not happy of accepting this pittance. It is almost like a subsidized body. So they are not happy, but they have no other income, they do it. But they are expressing their despair or anger or frustration. That is number one. Number two is that all of you have read about Madhu's instance in Kerala, right? I didn't have time, otherwise I have written. There are 2 points about this collection about Madhu. You see, a person as an Indian citizen, whether it's a tribal or non-tribal, couldn't have anything to eat for months. So he has no other way just to go to a shop and he didn't steal gold or money. He just took a pick of a rice and some chili, for which he was beaten to death. And we said, oh, these people they didn't keep the law because they cannot take it away because it's unlawful. So if you know their culture, their feeling, how they are subsidized by the body, how the others looked upon a body. See, in open bars, they are not allowed. But there is no discrimination, they would say. So the kind of frustration, and of course, family ties are very, very broken. A lot of divorces, more than the Canadian mainstream people. Children are studying them where there's separation of life. Because very places, mother is working somewhere. And prostitution. I don't mind if I ask a question. I had asked this question to media persons internationally in Australia. When we speak about tribal prostitution. If you don't mind, I'll ask the same questions to you. I don't want an answer, but keep it with you. In our place, after maybe 6 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock during night or dusk, a mainstream lady walks through the inroads and a tribal girl walks in inroads. Who is most likely to be molested? You might say equal. I'm sorry, no. It is the tribal girl who is most likely to be seduced and molested. Why is it that? The other is also a lady. Because of our public consciousness, what we call the public space that we have internalized the notion, tribal girl, you can catch any time, it's no problem. Even if she go to court, nothing will happen. Police will not do anything. If that is the reality, we have to find reasons why these people are in prison. You understand? You hope I understand. So the social structure and the problems, the dilemmas they face. Yeah, it is true that statistics says they are. Even African Americans, yes, disproportionate. Even here also. And now the minorities are also increasing. Need not necessarily be because they are violating the law, but maybe because of our insecurity that these people are given the equal rights, they might take it to a different level. So the government, as well as we, the mainstream people, wanted to make our position safe. So you can put them in prison or you can categorize them as uncivilized or something like that. I hope I have given you an answer, though it needs a little more time. Thank you.
Chitra, I hope you agree with
the question.
Yeah, please.
So I'm Dr. Srikala. I have read a lot of post-colonial theory in during my research on a post-colonial reading of M.G. Vesanji's fiction. So, as you know, he is an African, third generation African of Indian ancestry. So I've been reading some of this tribal culture, the othering, and all that. So what I would like to ask is, see, in order to understand tribal culture, now you need their works, their literature to be translated into mainstream language, now either in Malayalam or the colonizers' language. You need to translate them into the colonizers' language. So what is your take on that?
As I said, yes or no, because we had innumerable volumes of Malayalam literature, right? But none of these anthologies did contain any piece of writing about Dalit writers in Malayalam, right? That is why OUP met me. They asked me, Professor Dasan, can you bring out an anthology of Malayalam Dalit writing? So along with my colleagues, I worked for 2 years. And now, after that, they have planned another anthology of Malayalam poetry. The work was almost full. But Mini Krishnan rang up the editors and told, no, after Dasan's anthology, we cannot have a Malayalam poetry anthology without selections from Dalit poetry. That is the difference. That's the difference. I do admit the fact that there are problems. Yes. Translation has problems. Yeah.
So, Usha ma'am, I have a question. I'm Dr. Lalita. You remember me, I hope.
Yes, please go on.
Sir, good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Lalita. I'm working in Cochin University.
Right.
And I have one of those small questions. Like you said, indigenous voices are inadequately.
You are not seen. Can you make it your audio, please?
I can't, yeah, I have, my audio is okay. Then.
Oh, no problem. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But audio has gone.
Go ahead.
Lalita, you are muted. Please unmute yourself. Lalita, can you? Yes, please go on.
Please, please.
So, sir, you said indigenous voices are inadequately articulated. That means
Yes. Yeah.
whatever they have said is not sufficient. The reason being, can it be these two things? Like either they are not writing enough or expressing enough, or somebody is suppressing them.
No, it is the other way. Our inability to understand their culture and literature expressed in their orality, in their own dialect.
Yeah.
So this is the position that we have to change.
Yeah, that's right.
We are sensitized to thinking it is because of their lack of writing,
Yes.
because of their inability to express. It is the other way I'm saying. It is our ignorance, our prejudice, our inability to understand their culture. That's why I said, interact with them, talk with them, read their literature, and then we will sensitize ourselves.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then is there a very technical difference between Vanavasi and Adivasi?
Pardon?
Vanavasi and Adivasi.
Yeah, there are differences. There are differences. Adi meaning time immemorial. Indigenous peoples claim that we are the original settlers in this world. We are not sure who the original people of India were.
So they are the
now we have,
aborigines.
let me see. Now we have DNA evidence
proving
that at least 80,000 years before, the first Homo sapien mother children came through West Asia, and then they reached Nilagiri Hills, at least in Adakal, and they are the forefathers. And that is called Adima. Actually, it was Adima Nivasi. Now we have shortened into Adivasi. But forest dweller meaning, if you go and live in a forest for 10 years, I can call you a forest dweller.
Yeah.
You understand the difference?
Yes.
So it is actually to deny their actual right to be called as the original inhabitants of this land, that this terminology was used as an euphemism. That is the problem.
Euphemism. Okay. Then again, sir, one last question.
Yeah.
In that work, Fence, Bailey.
Yeah.
You said about the price of hunger. What is the price of hunger?
I'll take it to Bailey.
Bailey.
1 minute.
What can be the price of hunger?
Let me think of it. God, is it God? Fence, okay. What is your question? Please ask me once again.
The price of hunger. I didn't understand that.
Okay. The sweetness of banana, the price of hunger. It's not the price, is the cost, in fact. It is actually the cost of price.
Okay.
Because the other person also may have, so you don't enter into others' territory and steal.
Yes.
You won't understand, because many of these people whom I have lived with in the forest in America and Australia, they don't have fence.
Yeah.
They don't have doors even for their houses in the forest. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Anyone can enter, anyone can leave. That's I call extended family. There are more than 100 members, not born of the same mother and father, But any member belong to that community, consider all their grandchildren, grandfathers as grandpas, and all their grandmothers as grandmas.
Yeah.
I have lived with them, that's why I can tell about it. Otherwise, I would not have believed it.
Yes.
You know, to differentiate, they only say black mama, fat mama, gray mama, etc. Then everyone is a mama. How wonderful is such an extended family relationship?
It's like the ancient joint family system.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But, okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I also have a question that
Please.
is about the politics of the indigenous people, and you just mentioned. Why is it that they have not been given the status of indigenous people, and what is being done to get them that status? Is anybody working on it?
Definitely, yes. Even I think I have published in 1995 or so in Economic and Political Weekly about these tribal people. And if you just browse this idea, indigenous people rights and their struggle, you will get at least 100 hours worth of reading from the website. People, I'm only maybe the last person in this struggle. In different parts of the world, especially in India, there are hundreds of people, men and women, youngsters and senior people, proclaiming our solidarity, at least signing their petitions, donating them. I forgot to tell you also one thing, and I told you during the introduction and in the conclusion that what I was supposed to do is just like gardening. Suppose after listening to me or after reading, you are sensitized into, you feel you developed a kind of empathy towards these people. I presume that yes. And then what can you do? I'll tell you at least one or two things. At least read books, buy them. Number two, at least buy some grass mats, which will give them some sustenance. Pullu paya. At least buy some of their products. At least sign their petitions, even anonymously, if you don't want to divulge. There is a great lobbying internationally to UN. That's how it happened in 2002 and 2010. We all lobbied to say that descent-based discrimination should be included in race-based discrimination. UN was okay, but Indian government was not okay. They said, no. You see the other person in India government, yeah, we do have discrimination in India. Some people are discriminated, but we have in the constitution some positive discrimination matters. So we will bother. We will do it. You don't have to worry. That's the kind of position that Indian government took to UN. The same position that Indian national leaders took to addressing the issues of tribals and Dalits. When Ambedkar said no, they should be given separate electorate, Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, everyone said, no, we will manage ourselves. Gandhi said, okay, mixed dining and the condescension, persuasion, that will. So this is the kind of hypocritical position that mainstream discourse have been maintaining throughout the world, not only in India. You see, even in Japan, all of them belong to the same race. There is no racial difference. But people living in barracks, they call barrack meaning cheri, slums. People living in slums are still being discriminated in Japan. Even my own friend who was in India to do research here, lived with here in 3 years, I asked him, he said, no, Dasan, there is nothing. But after my scenes, he said, yes, Dasan. When I was playing with the boys in the slums, my mother used to say, don't go and play with them. See, it is there in all of us, discriminations based on race or ethnicity or cultures. The only thing for us, at least we claim that we are educated, quote unquote. If we claim that we are educated, education should liberate us from our own prejudices and bias, knowing the other, at least sensitizing. And if you sensitize in a field that you have an empathy, I said, you can do many things. At least buy something, at least donate something. See, people like us have been doing, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say this. I don't say this also, but because the discussion I'm saying, people like me have been contributing at least 1% of the salary, even now pension, towards these causes, towards these people, either this form or that form. What prevents you also from doing that? I'm sure some of you will be doing. And that is how we protect, we at least proclaim our sympathy, because we have been guilty for their miserable situation. That's how I feel. And many of us, especially in university academics, we have been trying to do whatever little we could, at least to support their students while they're studying, either paying their fees or giving them food allowances, or even these people who are now anthologized. They have come to my house even before publishing. We have given them some help, either in terms of money or in terms of food, at least mentally, encouragement to be bold, to come around. Many of the poets are my personal friends within this anthology. I'm not saying I did great things. I'm only saying if we could do little bit things that after sensitizing, that will make a lot of changes in the whole society in which. And let us be proud that we are also socially conscious citizens. That is what engaged Buddhism means. You see that people are suffering, whether men or English or American or Australian. If you feel that you can do something to make everyone equal and free and happy, then you do it. And we are a part of a large community which is internationally, at least in 180 countries, we have engaged Buddhists. We don't have to balden our hairs or have in a robe, but we still are socially engaged. Whenever there is inequality, when there is injustice, we try to intervene, we try to do whatever we can help. Just like the Aboriginal peoples, we believe that every object, living or non-living in the nature, has equal rights. So we are not exploiting anybody. We don't tell lies, we don't steal, we don't drink. So at least we do some minor things. That's enough. You don't have to proclaim that you are a great man, but simple things. And I am an organic farmer. For the last 30 years, I have not been using any pesticide, any inorganic material. I grow my own vegetables in a small patch of land. That's enough for me. And we do have a great community. We do all kinds of varieties of paddies, fields, rices, pulses, and we distribute among ourselves without profit. That's for your information. Thank you.
That is very noble work you are doing.
Hey, nothing like that. Just to make me happy. That's
about all the people who are working for the indigenous designation. What has been the response from the governments, from the Indian government? Is there any progress in getting the indigenous tag for these people?
No, not likely. For me, I don't think it will get, because the moment they accept the status indigenous people, it is mandatory that the government has to settle their land right issue. You got the point. You cannot go on denying the land rights of the people because India is a signatory to UN Convention of Indigenous Peoples' Rights. So if the moment you say that, yeah, they are, then we have to settle their land rights. So it is not to deny their land rights that we will go on saying that, no, they are not indigenous people. It's very clear. It is our mind, of the majority or mainstream people's mind. Think of us the other way. Suppose we were tribal people. And what would have been the position? So that is very simple. It is the politics. Whoever it is, I'm not blaming BJP or Congress or Communists. Whoever it comes, they will follow the same thing. Because they are not Aboriginal people. They are not tribal people.
But where is the hope for them then? Where is the hope?
That is why if you read their literature, there is a hopelessness, there is frustration. They are hoping against hope. They are hoping against hope. They know it's frustrated story. You see, think about the situation in Kerala. We had at least 30,000 hectares 10 years before. Even the simple person, I had negotiated with the Minister of Natural and the CM. When the Matana struggle was going on, when the other struggle was going on. As a person, I have taken my small share in negotiating. Dasan is very good idea. Come, you have tea, blah, blah, blah. Nothing will happen. Now, where is the land? At that time, if we had in 1975, Indira Gandhi given the law. If that has been distributed, everyone would have got at least 5 acres in 1975 had we distributed the surplus land. We took more than 10 years to bring out the rules for this. And then in 1980, by the time everything has been taken by encroachers, even the Malayalam plantation, that plantation. Now we are thinking of giving 3 cents. You can imagine how irresponsible, how prejudiced were, whatever we left LDF or UDF or whoever, had we distributed the surplus land already in the statistics of the government in 1975, or at least in 80, all the tribal families would have got at least 5 acres. Now it is 3 cents. Thank you.
Another one very short question I would ask is,
Please.
Last weekend in the Madhurabhumi weekend issue, I don't know if you had seen, there was
Yeah,
a
I'm writing. Yeah.
Vinod, who is now, who has completed his MPhil and now he's working for his PhD probably. So he tells how he was taken out from his tribe to a government facility, and from there to a school or a higher, he moved up through the facilities arranged by the government. But
Definitely.
then he describes how horrible it was. If he is where he is now, it is, I would say, in spite of all these facilities, he had to fight against these facilities to get where he is now. Because first of all, he says they are simply, the little boys and girls, I presume, are taken out from their natural habitats and then kept in hostels, which are like lockups. He says that I felt that I was in a prison. But still, I persevered and I managed to go to the next level. And fortunately, at that level, he had some teachers who were very encouraging and prompted him to try harder and go more. And then the second thing he says is about the diet. He says whatever food habits we were used to, everything was simply thrown out, and a very alien kind of diet was forced on these children. So that is one, and so slowly they forgot what was their original diet. And the third one is, as you were also saying about their language or dialect. They said we didn't know any other language. There they were forced to study English or Malayalam, which are totally alien languages, which had no connection with their culture. And so they have, most of the children have now forgotten their original dialect and the original language. So don't you think that the government policies are very lopsided and they are not, as you say, it is again a colonialization of these people. We have not changed.
I wish I had more time. Good that you asked the question. Very pertinent question. You see, I'll tell you one example. Captain Cook landed in Australia in 18th century, 1788 or so. These people who came by the ship had biscuits, bread, and liquors. Okay. And they enticed the Aboriginal people and gave them biscuits, bread, and liquor. They started eating biscuits, then their digestive mechanism went wrong. They got all kinds of diseases because they have not been eating anything like that. They've been eating only that is given in the forest. And they gave them alcohol in plenty, so much so that after 10 years, they could say, oh, these are all alcoholics. These are all evidence fact. I'm not saying, just saying, I have evidence of how many people have been given. And this is the same story here. We had a meeting in Idiki. I was supposed to speak and I said, these people have not been drunkards. They might have made their own ways of making some little alcohol and they've been consuming it only on ceremonies and occasions. But you people, the people who migrated here, especially the Christian minority in those areas, Idiki, Palakkad, Attapadi, you were making this. What happened? That person jumped and came to kill me. See, it is proof that before the migrants came into the forest land, they have not been alcoholic at all. It is by constant, continuous, because you can easily bribe them, you can easily manipulate them by giving alcohol. You can give an alcohol and lie with his wife or children or girl child. This is happening even now. The unwed wives in Wayanad, you see, more than 100. What happened? The people who made compromise are either CPIM or Congress. They get 1,000 rupees as compensation. 500 they put in their pocket. The remaining 500 they divide into tribal families. No unwed prostitute. See, this is happening in Kerala, which is the most literate, most progressive, most cultured. Are we not ashamed of this? That is the position that we are worried about. And we share this concern to students and colleges and teachers wherever we could. Of course, it's a very, very minority. Very, very few people in India, in the whole Indian academia, probably who speak like this. So we are just unique, unique birds, dangerous birds, of course, because when we speak out aloud, there are threatenings and problems, but we don't bother like that. It is for our own self-satisfaction that make ourselves a human being, a sensitive human being. That's all. Not to claim that we are great people, nothing like that. As a human being, you have the right to understand others and other cultures. And if you feel you have an injustice done, you just mildly at least protest. That's all. Very simple. Thank you.
Yes, I hope many of us here are inspired to work at least a little for betterment of their lives and more acceptance for them.
That would be
Are there
great.
any more questions? So in that case, shall we wind up?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
that Dr. Jamila had joined for some time. She was here in spite of the very odd hours in the US.
Yeah, she told me. I said, don't bother. We will manage. Don't worry.
But she had joined, but now I see she's not there.
It's okay.
I've asked her to speak. Thank you, sir, for spending so much time with us and for revealing a totally new world to us, because we all read about tribals and about their problems and all these common things that get reported in the newspapers. But now, after listening to you, we understand that the problem it goes far more deep than what we are seeing superficially. As you said about the alcoholism or about the unwed mothers or about the exploitation and all that we read about in the papers and in the media. But the problem doesn't end there. It is just tip of the iceberg, so to say. So we are very thankful to you for revealing this to us. And I hope that organizations like AIWC, we have branches everywhere. We have in Wayanad and those areas also. I hope that we are able to contribute in some small way in improving things, at least in some areas.
Great.
So maybe we'll consult you and we'll take your advice and see whether we can design some programs that we can execute in these places. So thank you so much, sir. And
Thank you. It is my pleasure.
All others who joined, members and non-members of AIWC, for joining us. And I'm sure all of you enjoyed this talk and the knowledge that we have all gained from this, and especially young people like Archana, I think you should.
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
As he said, sensitization is the most important thing. Sensitizing the people, especially the youth, about the plight of these tribal people, the indigenous people, that I think we should take it up as a mission. Young people should give the lead, and we are always there to help if we can do in any way. So with that, we can wind up today's session. I thank each and every one of you. And we look forward to the next session, which will be on the first Friday of August. Though we have not yet finalized the topic and the speaker, but surely we'll be there, as we have been having this unbroken tradition of having these lectures for the past 19 months or more. So thank you so much. And thank you, sir, again for your valuable talk. Thank you.
Wish you all the best and continue whatever little bit you are doing. Please continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Usha ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Usha ma'am.
Thank you. I hope you will be joining us for all other talks.
Yes, definitely, ma'am.
Please do. So thank you. So I take your permission to end the meeting. Thank you, Bhuneshwari, for helping out as always. Thank you.